Today's speakers are myself, Jen Underwood. I'm a senior director at DataRobot and a former Tableau Zen master. We also are joined by William Gray, the practice leader at Teknion, Joshua Milligan, Tableau Zen master and principal consultant, and Bridget Hugley, a senior consultant and also a Zen master with Teknion. They have some fantastic demos that we will be showing in just a bit. This session, we're going to have a reveal. We've done this before in Europe, but I don't think a lot of folks have seen this yet. So I'm going to quickly reveal it is the new Insights extension for Tableau. You'll get a sneak peek of that, and we'll see more of that at Tableau Conference. We'll have the Zen Masters walk through some projects that they've developed, combining DataRobot and Tableau together. And again, because they're Zen Masters, the demos and the practices that they've used in designing the dashboards were just literally amazing. And then we can learn more, and I'll show provide some other assets that we have and some activities to continue increasing your skills of combining these two solutions together. So the keys to AI success are translation, transparency, and trust. And if you're working with data, building dashboards, reports, communicating insights to the business, you are the very best person to help bridge this gap between data science and the business and understanding. So as we continue to get more sophisticated with analytics, Gartner yesterday at their symposium had mentioned augmented analytics and artificial intelligence in their top 10 trends for 2019. There's still a data literacy gap in the industry. And so really bringing these two groups together and taking it one step further, there's a lot to learn here. And today, some of the demos that the Zen Masters will show will help you bridge that gap that we have. So how do we use DataRobot and Tableau together today? Well, one of the first things in talking to early adopters, and one of the early adopters will be at the Tableau Conference, is Stott from Farmers Insurance. He's going to be co-presenting a session with me. And in speaking with him and looking at, talking to other early adopters, one of the key ways to leverage DataRobot and Tableau together is even just to filter out what I would say the signal from the noise, the metrics that matter most, and efficiently find what you might want to manually analyze, because it's inefficient to try and analyze manually every single combination in all of your data. It's just not an intelligent way to go about it anymore. So this will help you choose a metric that matters and then find the influencing features that to focus those efforts on further. When looking at Tableau and DataRobot together, there's really two different steps that we'll have. The first step is exploring the data. Again, finding in the metrics that you're interested, whether it's sales, we're going to show credit issues, and identifying those metrics and saying, well, what influences that outcome? And then once we have a better feeling for that, we're going to go ahead and dig much deeper and then leverage DataRobot to find predictive algorithms and find much deeper insights than you might get using visualizations alone. So it is my honor today to share. This is an extension that will be coming very soon. There'll be more information very, very soon on this new extension that's going to be added into the Tableau gallery. It was shown in Europe at the Europe conference last summer in July. And I'm going to show you a live demo of this shortly. So what we have here is some automated exploratory data analysis. A Tableau desktop author can go ahead and pick the metric they're most interested in learning about and finding out what influences that outcome or that metric. And DataRobot will expedite finding the correlations and some other insights with that particular metric. So let's take a peek at this in action and how this works. In Tableau, it's just a basic right now loan. It's from the Lending Club data set. We have some basic information in here, and ideally what we're looking for in this case is, predicting what loans might default or go bad per se. So what we'll do, the extensions are in the corner of Tableau. So if you look on, you create a new dashboard, we'll go ahead and drag an extension on. We'll go ahead and put that loan purpose sheet on here. Then we're going to put the extension on. With the extension, I'll go ahead and I have this locally because it's not yet available in the gallery. This is coming soon, right? So I'll go ahead and look for my T-Rex file. And now log in with my token to combine DataRobot with it. I'm just going to go ahead and speed this on the screen. So what we have here is it looks at the different spreadsheets and the data that's available inside of Tableau. In this case, I just have my loan purpose, so there's only one here, but there could be many more if you have many more worksheets in Tableau. And I'm going to go ahead and find insights related to loan is bad. I'm going to go ahead and click Start, and depending on how much data you have, this might take a little bit of time. So as the good cookbook person that I am, and the cooking shows, I'm just going to go ahead while that's finishing and show you the end results. So what we have here, when it completes, is showing you the grade. I can start to interactively delve in and look at the grade, the subgrade. Maybe I want to look at the negative correlations, and I can see it's the earliest line of credit, income, and those types of things. So that's a sneak peek at the extension that DataRobot is adding to Tableau. One key point I talked about, there's two steps in the process. The first step is just finding the insights that matter most, or the metrics that matter most, is you can then further analyze that data inside of DataRobot. So what you'll notice here, and here it is, see, I'm not kidding you, this is our data that just came, and it's now provided you a way to start a new DataRobot project. But rather than steal the thunder of the awesome Zen masters, I'm going to stop there and not show any more of the DataRobot side so they can demonstrate that to you. Let's see if I can go back to my session here. So what you're going to see from the different Zen masters today is how they have used DataRobot and Tableau together to solve problems and to get predictions. Some other things that you'll be seeing in there is how they've bridged and translated what do these individual predictions mean, what do these numbers mean, to establish trust in those numbers and understand what the machine is doing. In this case here, I have a simple dashboard, and we've reviewed this before. I'll be showing more at Tableau's conference and teaching a workshop in the morning on how to build these. But one thing that I've sprinkled in here into Tableau's tooltips are the explanations for each individual prediction, so that as a consumer of the dashboard, I can not just see the predictions, but I also can see the reasoning and the why the machine made that decision. So I'm going to now pass it on to, I believe it's Josh, with the Teknion team to show how they've leveraged and built these.
Yeah, I'm Joshua Milligan, Principal Consultant at Teknion and Tableau Zen Master. And I'm actually going to start by showing something that I built out about 6 years ago, working with a hospital, a regional hospital in Florida. They wanted to understand patient readmissions. Now, at the time, I had Tableau, and I had a team who could build out data warehouse structures. So working with them and then the analysts at the hospital, this is what we came up with, a readmission timeline. And you can see a row for every patient, as well as each one of their visits in that timeline. But it's much more than just a visualization of the data. It does very well at showing you when the patients were in the hospital and how long and how often they came back. But it really is an analytical tool, so I can set a window of time that I want to focus on. and I can see initial visits within that window, and then match up on diagnoses and procedures and see did they come back with the same diagnosis or use the same procedures. I could focus in on just those patients, and I can see the overall context, but then I can go in and see patients that match whatever criteria I set up. And at the time that I built this, I was incredibly proud of it. It was probably the most technically complex thing I had ever built, and I thought this is a great tool for the hospital to be able to see and understand their patient readmissions and understand why patients are coming back to the hospital. And the analysts there loved it. They could get a lot of rich, dense data, and they could start to see it. But as time went on, I realized they're not using this as much as I would have expected, because you have to go in, and it's really a lot of exploration. It's taking guesses at different diagnoses. It's taking guesses at different procedures, and you might start to see some patterns that might help you understand historical readmission data. But there isn't a lot that can help you make predictions about the future. So I can see which patients here readmitted in the past, but how do I know the current population of patients in my hospital? Who's likely to readmit there? And so this great analytical tool that I created, this great visual wealth of information, it didn't really accomplish the goal that I had in mind. And back then, about 6 years ago, I don't ever remember anybody talking about automated machine learning or artificial intelligence. Definitely no one was talking about automating predictions. We did talk a little bit about predictive models, but wow, I wish that I had known then what I know now, and that's where we head next. And Will Gray is going to show you a little bit of that.
Thank you, Joshua, and yes, you just passed me the ball, so I will share my screen, give it a second to pop up, and I appreciate that. And 6 years ago, that was pretty leading edge, and then I remember actually being at one of our Tableau user groups when I was not at Teknion, and I saw that, and I was like, wow, look at what that was able to accomplish. But as everything occurs, the world of technology has continued to advance, and this term machine learning, predictive analytics, automated machine learning, AI, continues to evolve. And DataRobot allows us to add a whole new set of tools to that set, and it really allows us to take those visualizations and analysis to the next level. And so I have what you're seeing on my screen here is a readmission data set that's based off of diabetic patients who have been readmitted over time. It is a publicly available data set. We've made some changes in here to even anonymize it further, and then to make it more applicable in what you'll see in the next session that's coming up. But over at the top, we have 52 columns. So I can scan over here, and everything from, we have gender, age, weight. It's not a clean data set, so we have things like question marks that are sitting there unanswered where weight is. We have empty fields for admission type. So kind of the data set that we're all used to working with, but it isn't a flat table. If it wasn't, you could use tools like Tableau Prep or Altrex to bring that data together. But for now, this is one big table kind of brought together. Across the top, we have different drugs. So if the patient is on a drug or not, if the dosage, if that measurement of that dosage is steady, if it's increasing, things like insulin, is it up or down compared to last time? So a wealth of information that would take forever or a long time for somebody to analyze without some form of automation practices. We have a target column here, which says, was that patient readmitted? This readmission window is around 30 days. So did they come back to the hospital or not within a 30-day window for a similar type of diagnosis or something that's related? And then we have free text fields that needs to be analyzed. So a wealth of information that could take a long time even using something like Tableau to kind of dig through. And so what we're going to do is feed that into DataRobot. I'm going to give a quick demo of DataRobot, but the main objective of this is to show how you can use that information, that insight derived from DataRobot into a data visualization. So I'm going to take that Excel file, and I'm just going to drag it into DataRobot. Before I do that, I will point out you can connect DataRobot to a multitude of data sources, whether it's Hadoop with HDFS or local files, so CSV, Excel, SAS files, zip files, or you can connect it up via a URL or a SQL Oracle type database as well. And I'm just going to drag that Excel file in, and what you're going to see on my screen is it's going to read it in. And then it's going to start doing some basic data analysis. So you can look at this and analyze it in Tableau first. A lot of us do that, but DataRobot's going to help do that as well, and it's going to create a feature set, and it's going to help identify which features are important for a model to be trained off of. And so it's finished, and as I scroll down, or it's about to be finished, I see that it's brought all 52 features in. Features, nothing but a column of data that we looked at before. So we have things like row ID. It's automatically learned that that is a reference ID. Race, gender, weight. If I look over at this feature list here, I can go and see, okay, informative features. So these are the features that DataRobot has analyzed and said, these are the important ones to making a prediction. And so if I look at something like gender and open it up, I can see a basic bar graph. I can see things like there's 2 unique fields, there's 0 missing values. For numerical fields, if we come down here to numeric, and I open that up, it's gone ahead and binned those, and then I can see things like mean, standard deviation, min, max. So some basic data analysis lets me understand what kind of features exist in my data set. The next step after I load that data in, I'm going to scroll up to here, and it's just an easy question. What would I like to predict? That column we looked at just a second ago was readmitted, so if they were readmitted or not, it's going to pull that up, and it's going to say, I have approximately a little over 4,000 rows where patients were readmitted. And then over here on the right, I see where patients were readmitted, true or false, where they were not. And I have a big start button. For those people who are advanced data scientists or want control more over what's happening in the model, there are a lot of advanced options here, and we'd love to talk to you about how you can tune that. And there's plenty of webinars that we've already done kind of on that topic, so I'm not going to dive too deep. For now, I'm just going to press the big button. And so when I press that, what you're going to see is it's gone ahead and it's going to do some a little bit more data processing. So it's going to create cross-validation and holdout groups that it's going to train the models on. So it's going to create 5 different groups, 16%, and then it's going to train the model on 16% of the data, 32% of the data, and 64% of the data, which allows it to get better over time, and then it's going to allow those it to pick the best models so that you get to see the best ones. Once it's produced those holdouts, which it's already moved fast, it's going to go ahead and create which ones are the most important and start ranking those. So I can see overall the importance of number of inpatients is very important, and so I can see that rank. So number of rows versus percentage of readmitted. So I can see that if somebody shows up somewhere between 10 to 12 times in that row, I can see they're more likely to be readmitted, which kind of makes sense. And how DataRobot already selected that. What it's also doing behind the scenes is creating paths for each model for feature engineering. And so I'm going to click over on the models. And what it's done here and what you see on the right side is a handful of models it selected. It selects about 60 to 80 models that work for the type of problem that exists in that column that we're trying to predict. And then it throws it out there, and then it starts doing its own internal competition on 16% of the data to see which models perform the best. Takes a subset of those and trains those on 32%, ranks them, and then repeats for 64% of the data set. So you're continuously getting an improved model. And what I find best about this and what really intrigued me with DataRobot in general was that when I was doing predictive modeling before, I might grab a couple random forest models, a linear or a logistics regression, a decision tree, and some form of gradient boosting, tune some of those different variables. I might run a handful of those and see which one works best. Here, I'm getting everything, even things that I was not familiar with, and getting to see those compete. So I get to see things like R models, TensorFlow, Python, XGBoost, an open source package called Vogel Rabbit, and then the beautiful part about DataRobot is they have a team of Kaggle all-stars. So Kaggle is like, think about a social media competition for data scientists. And so you'll get, they've recruited many of the top data scientist grandmasters to work for them. So you get their brains behind some of those top performing models. And you'll see those come up in the rankings as well. As it's learning and training those models, we can see how fast it's learning, speed of accuracy. We don't have anything yet because it's still going. But overall, we see those performed. And so we heard Jen earlier talk about being a good chef and having something already baked. I'm going to go ahead and have my Julia Childs moment and switch over to the deliciousness that's going to come out of the DataRobot oven. And so once it completes, and this takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete all the models and run some of the extra types, it creates something called an ensemble model, which is your best performing models kind of mixed together and blended together to output a better, more accurate prediction. So that's what you see here with things like ENet Blender, AVG or Average Blender or Advanced AVG. I can see the overall ranking, and I can choose what to rank by. For those who are familiar with data science, you can also see AUC or area under the curve. I'm going to stick with log loss because that's what DataRobot recommended. I can see how those models performed over time. So I can see that by clicking on here, I can see the gradient boosted tree classifier started off middle of the pack, but it really set itself apart towards the end, only being beat by some of those ensemble models. I can measure speed, model comparison, and load these up into prediction apps. But for the state of this call, what I care about is the accuracy of the prediction. So I want to choose the most accurate. And so between that, I can choose between an ensemble model, and then I can choose, well, I want to just go with a gradient boosted tree classifier. And so there's two different ones, and it's tagged. This one is most accurate and recommended for deployment. And so let's just dive into the ENet Blender real quick to look at that. So I'm going to click on it, and you can see all the pre-processing that took place in this blueprint. And so we can see that it's a combination of probably about 6 different models, and then it's running it through the ENet classifier to give us a prediction. To see what's going on in one of those blueprints at a lower level, I'm going to click on gradient boosted tree, and we can see for categorical variables, it's gone ahead and done ordinal encoding. And so it goes ahead and creates a bunch of different features for those models to learn off of. So it automates that process, so I know I'm doing the most efficient model. And then for numerical, it's going and doing the pre-processing and imputing values for that, so I get an accurate prediction on this side. Now that I'm going to select my ENet Blender because it is the most accurate, I can go and look at overall how did this model perform, and I can look at a lift chart, and I see this lift chart is performing very well. If I wanted to introduce any type of noise to the data set, I can increase that to 60 bins, and I can see how close the prediction are and the variability across each one of those bins. We're going to back that down to 10 for ease of use. And it's a very strong correlated model, so I feel good about that. I'm going to go back to evaluate real quick, click on ROC curve. And so ROC is where I can look at the overall AUC. I can see the curve. I see a good distance between the average line, which is kind of, if I just threw a random prediction out, how would it do, versus how does this model perform. And so I can see I have an AUC of 0.7. I can look at my confusion matrices, so I can see overall accuracy. I can see the precision of the model. I'm feeling really comfortable about this model and putting it into production right now because of the accuracy. I can look at feature fit, which is really neat because what you saw Jen produce earlier was basically pulling all these graphs into Tableau natively for enhanced data exploration. I can understand the model, so I see number of inpatients, which truly the top one, and next was disposition ID, number of diagnosis, number of inpatients. And then the last thing I want to look at is overall prediction explanations and seeing how does it make sense in how it's making its predictions. So for any given prediction, it can produce an explanation of why it made that prediction. So it's gone ahead and said row ID 1197 made a positive prediction, so it's likely to readmit. Number of inpatient visits 5. It's missing admission type missing, and the weight they're between 75 and 100 kilograms, so they're on the heavier side. And so that's why they made it. That's why this model made the prediction. Whereas on the other side, and I kind of find this funny, the number one reason why people aren't readmitted tend to be because they're expired or dead, so they passed away. So it's kind of a dark laugh, but it's a good validation to why somebody may not be readmitted. So I feel really good about this model. There might be some other things that I would change or try to enhance and try to get further rankings out, like adding different features. But overall, this is a very strong model. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and deploy this into production. So to do that, all I'm going to do is come over here to predict. And then I can either make a batch prediction, so I can drag a data set on and predict it, or I can deploy a model API. And so I'm going to go add new deployment. I already have it deployed to the server as this one, so that's what I'm going to keep it as. Deploy model API. We'll click on that. And then I can get the model name, the server, and the API path. And so with that, what I will do is I'm going to come over to Altrex, and I am going to take a new set of data called to be scored. So this is 2,500 new rows that the model has not seen yet, and I want to make a prediction. So these are new patients being added to my hospital. I'm going to drag in my DataRobot scoring tool. I'm going to plug in my API credentials. So I'm just going to select readmit analysis for Viz and the eNet Blender. And then I'm going to score this out to Hyper. And so I've written that out into a drive that Joshua can access. And so he can go and dive in further, because I can do Tableau and I can write it out into Tableau, but I'd much rather see what one of our Tableau Zen Masters can do with it. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Joshua.
All right,
Joshua,
thanks, Will.
Go.
So I was so excited when I saw this slide from Jen, the keys to AI success, that I grabbed a screenshot: translation, transparency, and trust, because that's what I really felt when I started to understand what DataRobot is, what it does. Will builds it out, and he feels good about what he's done, so he publishes it to production. But how do we translate that and give transparency throughout the entire process so that everyone from Will all the way to the end users of a dashboard can have trust in that process? And Will walking through it in DataRobot, that was really helpful to me to start to see how it works, to build that trust for me. But then I start to think, how do I communicate that down the chain to end users who are going to use this data? What about doctors and nurses in the hospital? How are they going to trust that these predictions are actually good? So when Will showed the ability within DataRobot to look at the feature importance and to understand how DataRobot ranked these features in terms of the importance and the weighting to the model, I immediately sat up straighter in my chair and said, okay, that is important, because everything seems to hinge on that. The way that the model was predicted, the reasons that we get in the scored data, it all ties back to these features and to the values that each individual patient had. So I took an export of that features from DataRobot. DataRobot allows you to export a CSV. I also took the scored data, so the final output, the predictions, and then I took that training data set as well. I brought all of that together. I used Tableau Prep, but you could use any kind of tool that allows you to blend that data together. And I reshaped it just a little bit so that I could start to explore it more deeply in Tableau. And so what I have is the ability then to look at each feature. I've given them a little bit nicer names than the original column, but I can start to see, okay, for each value, what's the breakdown in terms of patients who were predicted to readmit or not. And so I can see, yeah, someone who has nine inpatient visits, it's a very high prediction, but I can also see I've only got one such patient in the prediction data set and two in the historical data set, and then I can start to explore other aspects of that as well. And I can look at things like discharge disposition. And I start to gain some trust in the model. I start to understand the model a little bit better. But also when I start to see the shape of the data and it looks like this, that feels right to me as someone who works with data and visualizes it quite often. But it also gives me insight into some things that I can communicate to the end user. So they're the training data, the historical data. As I looked at that, I realized, showing that historical readmission rate for each value of a patient, that could be something that would be very useful to an end user to understand, okay, I see the reason why this individual patient was predicted to readmit, but historically, what have been the rates of readmission? And then I also notice what Will points out, expired patients not too likely to readmit. But then as I look through other factors, other features, it also helps me to understand what my data looks like. So for weight, for example, weight is a very where I have a value, the predictions are very high for the probability of readmission. But I have most of my data is unmarked. So it starts to show that yes, this was important to the model, but there may be some places where I can actually do a better job of capturing the data on the front end, and it may help me to build an even better model down the road. So this was a tool that I can use to understand what DataRobot is doing, and to start to understand what do I need to do to take what DataRobot did, the predictions that it made, and how do I translate that for the end users, for the doctors and nurses and discharge staff that are going to use this? What can I show them to help them have trust in it and to help them understand even more what they should do with it? And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Bridget Cogley.
Thank you. And Joshua, one of the things I'm actually going to showcase is some other pieces from your discovery that you didn't share with the audience. So I just want to kind of call out your discovery went well beyond that. And so part of what I did was working backwards, taking some of your learnings and applying them towards my dashboard. And so you initially created this chart at the individual level, so looking at each individual and understanding why they were likely to readmit, and giving me kind of a scale and a feel for what might be a contraindication. So the model says, oh, hey, this person's likely to readmit. But, these are some of the reasons why, either for or even against. So I wanted to bring that in. So I did start my dashboard a little bit by working backwards. Moving on, I needed to find ways to bring this home to the end user. So part of this is that discovery. And you had mentioned before that you had done kind of an individual patient level kind of discovery to look at, okay, well, can I find my patients? And so I've created this exploration that allows me to not only affect the other chart, but then to also get direct action from my patients. I can see that Orville Doyle, for example, has an 85% probability of readmission. I can kind of see where the average of the factors fall, but then I've also got this within the tooltip, kind of some proactive measures that I can take that if I do see that this person is likely to readmit, I can put those predictive measures into action. And so I see their next appointment. I've got a phone number. I can include any other additional information right there on the dashboard to help guide my mission, which is predictive and proactive. And my big part of this dashboard is I need to stop patient readmissions. So this is part of that translation, transparency, and trust. So I've kind of got half my dashboard. Now I need the rest. And so part of this is my call to action. So if I'm working at this hospital, we have one goal in mind when we're using this data, and that is to reduce readmissions. Anybody within the healthcare industry knows that if you have too many readmissions, it does affect your Medicare and Medicaid scores, and it affects CMS reimbursement. We don't like readmits. It's not good for the patient, it's not good for the providers, and it's not good for anyone. So the hospital here has set a target. It says right now we're at 24 potential readmits. We need to get this down to 12%. That's still fairly high, but again, we're making a goal to really drop as many readmissions as possible. We can kind of take a look at days. This is kind of how we also look at things. But then the final piece is I need to bring that model data in and really start talking about it and clarifying. So I've got this chart, and by itself it looks like a lot. So that's why I've broken this down. We've got our model, which we'll discuss. From that model, I also get something called a positive probability. How likely is this person likely to readmit? And from that, we also have a strength score. In my days, I would call that kind of confidence, or kind of that, how likely is this probability to be true? And then lastly, these people get flagged as a potential readmit, which is where I then, as a provider or a user of this dashboard, can start taking action. I've also then translated this. So I've got my model importance. So the model says, hey, number of inpatient visits, this is a big deal. We saw that with Will. We saw that in Joshua's discovery. And then we also saw both within Joshua's discovery and Will's bit, how much weight is a factor in this. So I can kind of see these two items called out in this chart. I can see what else comes into play. Now I need to put this all together. So that way, as my users use my dashboard, they know what my mission is. They know, okay, I'm going to start clicking on things and targeting maybe patients with weight problems. Again, since this is a diabetic set, weight is a big deal, and I know I'm going to start taking action on that. I may take action on number of inpatient visits, but I can start working through this dashboard, targeting very specific patient populations, and contacting them or taking intervention and making sure that I'm servicing my clientele as appropriately as possible. And so this is kind of how we put it together. We've got this call to action. We've got some standard findings that we typically look to. And then what we do is we really start taking this model and introducing it very casually. So understanding how does the model itself score, but then also what we see in reality as kind of common influencers. So we're taking both what we know statistically and what we know anecdotally and accommodating that. And then lastly, making sure that there are targeted, tangible actions. So how do I then use this to affect the change? I've got the predictions, but now I need to translate those to reality. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jen Underwood, who will start talking kind of about best practices.
Thank you very much. So what you just saw was a phenomenal set of dashboards designed by Zen masters that really know how to bridge that gap with making predictions make sense to the business, and not just make sense, but actionable. That was really impressive. What DataRobot helps you do is apply some of the best practices that you saw and make it accessible to business analytics pros or non-data scientists in the enterprise. We provide a platform that allows you to have repeatable, automated process, because you know you need to understand how that number was generated and come up with the same conclusion to continue getting that credibility and trust in the number. We've shown you not just explainable, but actionable predictions. So again, making that something the business can use. Collaborative. So one of the things when you look at democratizing analytics and storing the scored results, now you can leverage, Tableau and applications. You can take what you've been building and let the entire business put predictions to work. And last but not least, one of the things as you start to scale out citizen data science, this is really no different from when Tableau had grown in popularity and started to scale through the business. A lot of those processes that you had in rolling out self-service analytics and governance and best practices absolutely apply. So you would have a running start if you've already done that. What DataRobot will provide, and we didn't necessarily show today, it certainly is in other sessions on this, are some documentation and templates that you can automatically generate that will take those models that we have and document them. We also have some model management features to ensure that the models that you have in place stay fresh and updated with the latest and greatest information, as well as stay relevant. These types of things, when you think about rolling out predictive analytics, again, it doesn't have to be something that you don't understand. It can be something that not only do you understand, but you can trust it and you can put it to work. To help you get started with DataRobot and Tableau and sharing some of these tips and techniques that we showed today, we have a page, and I have the link here for folks that we'll also be sharing to sign up for a starter kit. So the starter kit will provide some getting started documents and some best practices and some white papers to help you make the most of this combined solution. If you are going to Tableau Conference next week, the most exciting analytics event of the year, yes, I'm a little bit biased, but essentially you can visit both of these groups. DataRobot has a booth at 2:15 and Teknion's booth is 4:14. I understand the folks that just gave this session today will be taking turns at their booth at Teknion's booth, giving what's called Tech Talks every half an hour. So if you do want to talk to them about data science and other Tableau topics and learn some of the tips and tricks that they showed today, that's how you can, find them. And the other one that I would like to say is myself and Scott Barton from Farmers Insurance, and I just found out that Tom Davenport wrote about him in his latest book. So that was kind of interesting. But we'll both be giving a session on, it's a hands-on session, how to build these, how to find where to export, things like that, feature impact within DataRobot to surface that up in dashboards. I believe you have to probably register on the mobile app, on the Tableau Conference app on October 23rd. And then certainly not last but not least, we're going to have an entire campaign on this whole concept of the art of AI storytelling and helping you get better at explaining machine learning results and what this means for the business. And our first foray into that will start on November 6th. We'll have a webinar called The Art of AI Storytelling. And with that, I'm going to take a look at some questions that we have from the audience. The first one is a selfish question that I have for the Teknion team. I'm going to go ahead and look for the questions here. But wanted to get a feeling for maybe one of your favorite, maybe it is this particular one that you showed the use case, but one of your favorite use cases of combining this in the results that you've seen.
I'll jump in and say that I'm definitely biased towards the medical, just being able to predict around readmission. I know kind of in some past lives where I've worked in healthcare and just being able to reduce readmissions because it's unpleasant for the patient as well as everybody else involved. I know that's been an area that I've been interested in, and then also just looking at other areas as well in the future. I know I've got that on my roadmap.
Yeah, and I'll also add that, 6 years ago I showed the dashboard that I created, and not only was I proud of it technically, but just practically, it was the first dashboard that I'd ever created where I realized, wow, each one of those little rectangles on the Gantt chart, that's a time that a real person was in the hospital with a real serious condition, and it really brought home to me that as I work with data, it's impacting real lives. So it's incredibly exciting for me to now jump ahead and say, okay, that's what I was able to do then. Now I'm able to do even so much more, and the potential for doing good is so much greater.
Oh, that makes sense. And I've seen some Department of Defense and some things that we can't necessarily show the general public on, even what's protecting us on a day-to-day basis as well. So another question that we have, and I guess this one would be for me, are there plans to integrate DataRobot into Power BI in a similar fashion? From Adam. Thank you, Adam, for asking that. We will be attending the Past Summit Conference. I'm going to have with me Nathan, and what's Nathan's last name? I can't remember Nathan's last name, but he's been doing a lot of really interesting work with Power BI and with Power Apps and Power Flow, and we'll be showing some of that there. A lot of what you saw today with exporting the results from DataRobot, that can be surfaced in Power BI today, and I showed a little bit of that in Intelligent Dashboards webinar. The extension is probably what's unique to Tableau right now. The next question I have is from Thomas. Says, I'm a business analyst. How can I explain and validate the results in DataRobot? Does she need advanced statistical knowledge? And does the evaluation include enough information for validating data?
I think I can take that one. This is Will Gray, and then I'd love for you to jump on that. But I think that's the one thing I really love about DataRobot compared to, there's not a lot of competition in that automated machine learning space, but compared to other data science platforms, is the fact that these models are highly interpretable. And, we covered DataRobot very quickly in about 10 minutes. There's a lot of documentation behind the scenes that arms you for having those conversations. And it makes these models highly interpretable, highly shareable, and allows you to feel comfortable. And the nice thing is you can see, there might be a TensorFlow model, right? Something very advanced neural network that could be high performing, but then right below it, there could be a logistics regression because of some of the feature engineering that could perform almost just as well. And so for me, sometimes I make that trade-off of going with the absolutely most accurate model to the one that I think I can get the most consensus in to get it in production. DataRobot, I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Jen.
So one of the things that we've done to help business analysts is the little, and you may not have seen them on the tabs themselves. I don't know if I'm still showing my screen or not. And there is on the model and the leaderboard itself little badges that will show up. And those badges will guide you to these are the ones that are recommended for, whether it's recommended as for accuracy, recommended for deployment, and some other types of recommendations. So you can get that guidance as to, from a validation standpoint, what ones that we've gone through with our cross-validation that the data scientists that have developed the blueprints for them have said are the best ones. Some other things to be thinking about and validating is, and it's not something we've shown a lot of at this point, model management and drift, and knowing, and this is one of the frequently asked questions that we would get, would be, well, we know the model's not performing as well as it used to. Now, how do we make it better? So DataRobot has, it's a management screen that you can see how the model performs over time and what things might be influencing what's degrading in it so that you know to revisit the input or to revisit that model. So there's lots of different things that we can do visually to help with that, but we're also in the tool itself providing some tips and guidance. Another question I have from Robert. I'm guessing not, but can you see the scripts behind the models and individually tweak them? Yes, there are different versions of DataRobot, and there are some options that we have APIs that you can work with. You can also, it's called CodeGen, and then there's a Prime option where you can see, and especially in banking. So we work with a lot of banks and regulatory, groups that have to be very transparent with regulatory compliance, and certainly we can look at the code there.
And I'll jump in here as well, because that was one of my core questions as somebody who loves to go into R and Python myself. The thing I love about DataRobot is the fact that it becomes kind of a core platform and a great way to deploy and share models. And so if you want to, you can access a Jupyter notebook. You can develop, there's a repository as well, so you can have the ability to integrate other models outside so as you make adjustments. But what I would say also is, in a lot of these models you have the ability to adjust the hyperparameters right there in DataRobot, which makes it super easy to make sure that you're getting consistent models, consistent deployments, and then you can take advantage of things like measuring drift and the deployment options that are available as well.
Okay, I have another question, and this one looks like it's directed to us here at DataRobot, and it's a fair question. It's from David, and he says, have you guys worked with Click on some of the extensions? Now, Click's been a wonderful partner, and David, I appreciate that you sent a wonderful dashboard that we showed in the Intelligent Dashboards webinar in June. We showed a great dashboard. Since then, I've seen a couple different efforts by partners in Click's ecosystem, one in Atlanta and then one in Europe, of some amazing different integrations that have been done with the APIs directly. So certainly Click is another one that we have folks doing all sorts of really interesting things. I'd love to do more with them officially per se, rather than everyone doing their own thing. But what I can say is I've seen some really fantastic things already from that partner ecosystem. Next question, how does someone sign up for the Art of AI Storytelling webinar? There should be on datarobot.com, there's a webinars link. Sometimes it's a little tricky to search and find some of these. Hopefully what we'll do is I'll have this group send out the link to how to register for that. I don't have that link memorized, and it can be a little tricky to find. But that one will be on November 6th, about the same time as this webinar, and we'll go ahead and see if we can customize the email that goes out to let folks know that we're going to be having that one and where to sign up. Let's see if I can find another one here before we wrap up. So I'm gonna direct this one to the Teknion team. How would you suggest someone get started? They know Tableau, but they don't know much about machine learning.
That is a great question, and one that kind of resonates with me because I am not formally trained in anything data science. I just found my way because I ask a lot of questions and I wanted to find solutions to those. And so I think one of the best courses actually for just understanding high level, even if you're not using DataRobot, is probably DataRobot University. I know that sounds like a very salesy plug, but it really allows you to see the forest through the trees. A small little pun, right, between a decision tree and a forest model. But it allows you to not let the code get in the way and worrying about how do I choose Python or R or what do I'm giving up. And it really allows you to understand, all right, what is a model? What is my approach? What is the data science path? So how do I get data, collect it? What is feature engineering? How do I make sure I'm not overfitting a model? How do I look for errors, target leakage? It covers a lot of topics in 2 days. That sets that fundamental base. Whether you go DataRobot or another coding platform, it kind of gives you that foundation. And so I highly recommend DataRobot University. There's some other great courses in general if you plug in other places to things like on edx.org or Coursera. I can't speak highly enough about just continuing to learn through those platforms. But I would say I got the most out of DataRobot University. And then, of course, we do kind of ramp up training as well here at Teknion. And so we would love to talk to you about what you're specifically trying to accomplish, and we can tailor one with some of our data scientists that we have here specific to your organization.
And I would say I'm not as familiar. I'm definitely more strong on the Tableau side and learning DataRobot. So part of what I've got on my roadmap is, again, the Coursera courses. I know they've got some stuff on data science that I've looked at in the past, and I will be revisiting, as well as getting in, exploring. I've got some different personal projects I want to look at, and so part of it is learning on that. So setting up kind of safe to learn areas and seeing kind of how that plays out versus, what my previous statistical knowledge would tell me.
Well, great. With that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Thank you so much, Teknion team. This was phenomenal.